Boxer centers, and here's Pedersen. Scores! Unbelievable. What a shot.
Off the bar! Sprint, and it's given back in! It's changed! It's 4-4!
Surveys, nowhere to go, and back in the end zone. Touchdown! What a catch by Tyler Lockett.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of the
You clown.
Chapters podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Ray, and I'm joined by always by our good friend and co-host, Ty Party. Ty, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
I'm good. We're doing a new way of recording. We're going to be recording over phone instead of Zoom, so we don't have to worry about internet connection issues. And to be honest, this actually sounds much better. But let's just jump right into things now. And Thomas Drance, he dropped an article on The Athletic today about the Canucks cap situation. And yeah, once again, the Canucks are going to be in, or kind of already are in are going to be in cap trouble. And these big contracts that they've signed might force them to make some tough decisions down the line. And not everybody this offseason could be brought back.
Actually happy that actually people are starting to realize that this is a legitimate issue, and I've said this for I'd probably say going on I said even before they really signed the deals last summer that this is going to be an issue eventually, because you even signing Antoine Roussel, who's relatively market value at his deal, right? You sign him, you sign, let's say, for 10 and for $3 million, whatever. Where's all your money coming from, really? Because your two best players are on ELC deals, and you've still got Tyler Myers. The other one that's being brought up, obviously, is how are you going to replace Chris Tanev, who likely is going to have to leave in free agency?
Yeah, I've seen some tweets saying today that if the Canucks managed their cap wisely for the past few years, they would have gone after a guy like Panarin or Pietrangelo or Hall, which yeah, that would have been great, but this is why teams like the Canucks shouldn't be overspending on bottom six guys. Well, you can do that if you're a contending team, but you don't have to be a rocket science to know that the Canucks are not a contending team yet. And I knew this would be an issue for the last 2 years, I believe, ever since the whole Jay Beagle contract came about. And if you're a Canucks fan and you don't think the Canucks have cap issues, you really need to wake up. And Pedersen and Hughes are going to need some new deals in about a year or two, and it's not going to look good if they take on bridge deals, which I highly doubt they will take bridge deals. And both of these players are going to want to stay long term, and Pedersen and Hughes are going to ask for some big money. And where's the cap space going to come from? It's all gone to Tyler Myers. It's all gone to Brandon Sutter and Jay Beagle and all that.
Okay, so I'm just looking at this right now. So basically you have, if you're looking at even just next year, right? So you have $18 million, I think, if the cap stays at 81.5, which, yeah, 81.5. So you have Miller, Pedersen, Besser signed. So there's your first line, right?
Right.
Then your second line, you've got Pearson, Horvat. Still got to find a top 6 winger if Toffoli doesn't resign, and he's not gonna be cheap. Then your entire third line's not signed for next year. Levo, Gaudette, Bertanen. Then your fourth line, you probably have Roussel signed. I'm going to say Roussel plays on the fourth line next year. Beagle and Sutter, maybe. Like, realistically speaking, you have $18 million to replace your entire third line. I mean, they have enough replacement fourth liners. Like, that's not a worry. But you have $18 million to replace a top 10 to 12 goaltender, Toffoli top 6 winger, your entire third line, and 2 top 4 defensemen. Like, you're gonna have to make a lot of tough decisions. And the thing that I kept telling people, and I was getting called an idiot for this, was if you got guys on your ELC deal and you're rebuilding, your trajectory should always be up. But in the Canucks case, it's almost like they have their core, but the pieces around them aren't as good as the core is. So there's no way that they can trend upwards because they have all these replacement guys, locked up. So how are you supposed to trend upwards when you obviously can't improve in places?
Fair argument, yeah. You can't. A team like the Canucks, who supposedly should be rebuilding around this young core, they gotta put some good supporting cast around them, as you said, to trend upward. But the Canucks have signed these replacement level guys, and they're just stuck. We're kind of stuck where they are, or you can even say trending downward. But one thing that doesn't also help the cap situation is the Luongo cap recapture thing, where we have to pay him $3.33 million, for the next 3 years, until the end of 2022. And the Canucks are the only team that, aside from the Panthers, but I guess they only have to pay him for 1 or 2 years. This cap recapture penalty, and it's kind of dumb. And a few days ago, news broke that there'd be less penalties on this thing. So in Minnesota's case, there will be no cap recapture penalty if Suter and Parise retire. But for some reason, the Luongo cap recapture penalty is still in effect, and this is just stupid in my opinion. And Durant went off a few days ago about this on TSN 1040. If I were Benning or Aquilini, I'd be going at Bettman for this, because it's stupid, this whole cap recapture thing. And the contract Luongo signed was a 12-year deal, and those contracts don't exist anymore.
The thing is, though, at the same time, yeah, it's really stupid, but this shouldn't be a reason for your team being mediocre.
Oh, it's not the reason. It's a small part, but there's a whole bunch of other reasons.
Exactly. And I'm just looking at this right now, also going back to the cap, is you've got, let's say, your top 10 in wins by replacement. You've got Sutter, who got a little bit lucky. He's right at 10, right? Solid defensive player. Not many people are going to give him credit for that, but I will, because I think he's a really good defensive player. But you've got to replace Toffoli 5th, Stetcher 6th, Gaudette 8th, Levo 9th, and then even going a little bit down, Tanev at 13, Bertanen at 14, and all the guys near the bottom with Beagle, Pearson, Jordy Ben, Myers. All those guys are still locked up. So, I mean, again, all your positive... The thing is if you make the argument about your ELC deals coming up, right, and you say, oh yeah, well, we have top prospects coming up, those prospects still haven't made any impact at the NHL level. So how can we you have a certain level of safety in a guy like Bertanen or Levo or Gaudette that you know what you're going to get from him. You know you're getting an everyday NHL player. You can't guarantee that with any of these prospects you have in your pool. So how are you supposed to? You're basically saying, oh yeah, I'm expecting an ELC guy to come in and replace the level of play we pretty much had from everyday NHLers, and that's not a realistic expectation to have for every single player. Prospects really develop at an unstable rate, So, and the Canucks don't have too many of them. So again, it's like they've handcuffed themselves so bad with these deals that like they can't improve. And again, I posted that tweet this morning. Hall, Pietrangelo, even like, you know, even in this case, I would have been fine with the Miller deal for that much, because if they were in like a situation to contend, and you're like, okay, we've got our ELC deals, let's go all out and we're going to pay Miller some money to come here. Like, fine with that. But in a situation where you're a rebuilding team and you've made so many poor decisions regarding your rebuild, you've probably made like 2, maybe 3 rebuilding moves during your entire rebuild. And in my opinion, I don't understand how these hockey guy GMs, I'm going to call them that, they basically say, okay, we have like, you know, 2 high picks from like, you know, absolutely terribly constructing a roster. And all of a sudden we've rebuilt, so now we have to make a big splash in free agency and go after Tyler Myers, Louis Eriksson. Like, it just doesn't make sense, because, again, shouldn't your goal be win a Stanley Cup and not, you know, play 7th and have no chance? I don't know. I get frustrated thinking about this team sometimes.
Yeah, so do I. Many could argue that it wasn't even a rebuild in the first place. It was more of like a retool on the fly. And I'm kind of glad I woke up to see that this wasn't really a rebuild. And rebuilding teams don't sign bottom 6 guys to these contracts. They stockpile on picks and try to develop prospects, which the Canucks haven't really stockpiled on picks. But sure, Pettersson, Besser, Hughes, they've developed nicely. But man, these decisions, like the Eriksson contract, which I admit I thought was good at the time, but now looking back, I wonder what the hell was I thinking. Well, this
I don't think you can fault him entirely for Eriksson, and I might get, you know, a bunch of hate for that, but Eriksson was a legitimately like good player.
Oh
and
yeah,
again,
he was.
Again, like, I don't condone the deal, right? Because I think signing anybody at the state of their franchise when they're about 30 years old. Again, when we can't predict how rapidly guys are going to decline going into his 30s, it's not a deal you want to bank on, right, to get better. The same thing with the Tyler Myers or the Beagle deals. It's like these guys, you know what they are, and you're pretty much banking on them performing at that same level for, you know, at least like 50% of their contract.
Oh yeah.
In Eriksson's case, it just like he entirely declined. Like, it's almost like, as Gallagher said on the Canucks Convo, he said, like, it's like he almost forgot how to play.
Oh, jeez.
And, you know, I think at the same time, like, I don't think he's a guy that he's going to live up to how much we paid him, and that's pretty much evident. But at the same time, I don't hate him as much as a guy like Sutter or Beagle, and more towards Beagle, in the sense that he actually provides a really solid, you know, possession winger type player that, like, he's good defensively, he's going to control shot share offensively, that he's not terrible, and, like, I don't hate him on the Horvat wing if they can't replace that top 6 winger. Like, it's not as though and people think he's like, there's guys that are like boringly good. Do you know what I mean by that? It's like that they have really good analytics, but they're not flashy. So like Louis Eriksson is like boringly good, but he's still not worth the amount that they paid him.
Yeah, I did not expect. Well, anyone probably did not expect him to decline this fast. And I thought, oh well, he probably has another 2 or 3 20-goal seasons left in him. But unfortunately, that hasn't worked out. And remember, Botch called him Little Things Louis, and he does do little things pretty good. But the only reason why he's so harped on is because of his contract. But there's also the Sutter, the Beagle, the Myers contracts, and the Canucks, they've dug themselves in this hole that it's going to be really hard to get out of. Anyway, let's move on to Canucks Twitter being stupid again. The team awards were released about 2 days ago. Markstrom was MVP. Pettersson, most exciting player. Hughes, best defenseman. Well, who else would it be? And JT Miller was unsung hero. It's, well, I said 3 out of 4 I got right. Except for Unsung Hero. I voted for Gaudette. Did not expect Miller to be the unsung hero, but I thought your leading scorer can't be your unsung hero, because unsung hero is defined by someone who doesn't get enough credit for what they do. But a day later, NHL.com left Miller off their Super 16 best left wingers of the season list, or whatever it was. I guess you could say Miller's an unsung hero of the NHL. And Markstrom was MVP. I was right. Chris Faber was right. Joshua Griffith was right. It was the right decision, but I still saw Canucks Twitter fighting over this. And to be honest, if Pettersson won the MVP award, I wouldn't be upset. Markstrom and Pettersson are both great players. Both had great seasons. And honestly, both of them deserve MVP.
I mean, I look at it as that Canucks players can argue over everything, so there's nothing you can do to prevent that. But it's not as I think Pettersson was MVP, but Markstrom was good. I'm not gonna complain. He's probably two on the list, and it's pretty clear at that point. The thing about JT Miller is, how can a guy that's your leading scorer, he's fourth in wins per replacement, fourth or fifth, I think, fifth if you include Markstrom. Fourth as a skater in wins per replacement this year. A guy who's got a very strong two-way profile and the whole bit. How can that guy be your unsung hero? Because
exactly.
What about a guy like Troy Stetcher? He consistently proved that he's a good two-way defenseman. He played really well in the penalty kill this year. And what are you talking about that guy? 6th in wins per replacement. Another top 4 defenseman, one of the only bright spots in this D-core. Alex Edler. Look at how well he played offensively. Offensively, he was a top pair defenseman when I'm looking at the numbers from that. 7th in wins per replacement. What about him? Adam Gaudette, even to that far. Power play specialist. Very, really good finishing rate on his offense. Didn't have super good underlying numbers, but I'm not going to argue about him as the unsung hero, because he was an important role in this team. Josh Levo. I'd even go as far to say you're gonna laugh at this and maybe go at me, but Louis Eriksson, that again, his contract's not even comparable to how much he performed at, but he played in a top 6 role and he controlled shots at a really good rate. That again, I'd probably even think he's more of an unsung hero than JT Miller is.
You're not wrong there, actually. You're not wrong. And your leading scorer shouldn't be an unsung hero. Guys like Stetcher, Gaudette, Levo, well, shame he got hurt last December. He probably would have made a strong case. And maybe even Louis Eriksson. All better cases than JT Miller for unsung hero. And
Tyler Mott?
Yeah, Mott was another name that people were throwing around as well.
I think Mott wasn't good at even strength, but
on the penalty kill
profile. Yeah. His penalty kill profile really I think he was a top 15 penalty killer in the league. Again, as a fourth liner, that's all you kind of want from somebody. And he's making less than $1 million. I love Tyler Mott. I got no problem with him as a fourth liner.
Me neither. He's really good on the penalty kill, but at even strength, he has his issues. But
and even when you're talking about the JT Miller thing with NHL.com, I found out. I looked more into it. Obviously, I saw that Dan Rosen, I think, wrote that it was they have to abide by their positions, right?
Right.
So for whatever reason, JT Miller's listed as a center. I don't know why.
It's because he can
have, Tyler Toffoli's a center. They just don't fix it. So basically, instead of overriding the system, they left him as a center, and they say, "Oh yeah, well he's not a top 16 center." And if Elias Pettersson's not better than him, again, really stupid. But that's why he wasn't top 16. But obviously, he's probably a top. I'd almost go as far as to say he's a top 15 winger at least in the entire NHL.
Yeah, I think the reason why they listed Miller as a center because he can play wing and center. Very versatile player.
He hasn't played center at all this year. The only time that you could, I guess you could count that he played center because of all the faceoffs he took. But at a natural position, he's not going to play center after the faceoff. So how much stock are we just putting into just that he took the offensive faceoffs in one side of the ice? Elias Pettersson was the legitimate center on that line. So are you going to put Elias Pettersson as your left winger, or are you going to have another center? Like, it seems like every forward's a center almost on NHL.com for whatever reason.
Whatever reason. And once again, proves that Eastern bias is real. And people at NHL.com don't really watch the Canucks. But another thing Canucks Twitter was arguing about was, like, the whole real fan thing. And there's this guy, I'm not going to name names, on Twitter.
Well, everybody knows who you're talking about. So, like, just say...
Yeah, so if you know, you know. If you don't know, then tough luck. But...
Also, Brad Marchand listed as a center. So, I mean, NHL.com, just get your head out of where the sun doesn't shine. Yeah,
anyway... this guy says, I'm a better fan than you because I had season tickets for the last 20 years, and yada yada.
That guy. Just say his name. Like, nobody cares. He's not gonna hear this.
Nah. I don't want to cause...
Okay, can I say it?
Fine. What's his name like?
What was his name again? The guy was, like, legitimately, like, okay, somebody at Best Mode, he dug up an article that showed this guy was, like, part of the ride in 2011, and he got, like, arrested in the whole bit.
That was 94, but... whatever.
Oh, he was part of the 94?
I
thought he was part of the 2011 one.
I don't remember. It was one of those two because, yeah, he says I'm a better fan because I had season tickets for the last 20 years or whatever. And come on, not everyone. I tweeted this. Not everyone can afford to go to games. I've only been to 3 in my lifetime: 2013, 2018, and 2019. And that's where I met Ty for the first time. And not every Canucks fan lives in Vancouver. Like Sean Warren, for example, he lives in Kamloops, and there's this account called UK Canucks Fans. Apparently, the Canucks have a good following in the UK too. So, are they not real fans because they don't live in Vancouver and go to games? No, you're a real fan if you support the team and you watch the games on TV or listen to them on the radio. Simple. And but I'm a big Chelsea fan. Am I not a real Chelsea fan because I've never been to a game at Stamford Bridge in frickin' London? No. Am I not a real Seahawks fan?
I think this is almost such a dumb conversation that we actually have to have this.
I know, it's kind of a dumb conversation, but I wanted to get this off my chest because I can't deal with some of these people. Like, what the hell? You're a fan if you support the team and watch the games. It's that easy. Oh. I'm not a real Seahawks fan because I've never been to a game at the Clink in Seattle. Not true. Well,
you gotta go.
Oh, I will. I will, definitely.
Like that, I'd say like that is like Canucks game times like 10. Like Seattle is like nothing else.
Oh yeah, I will. When
I went to that last game. I went to was the last. I think that was like one of the last games where the LOB was together, right? With it was against the Colts in prime time. So I bought him thinking that Luck would be. I bought him thinking Luck was going to play, but that was just insane. I was at the very back of the stadium, didn't even care. It was so damn loud. Like, I've never been to a playoff game for the Canucks, but that's probably as close. That was a regular season week 4 game for the Hawks, and that was as louder than a playoff game.
I think I remember that game.
It was a good game.
And didn't the Seahawks smoke them or something?
They were getting blown in the first half, and then they came back in the And they came back in the second. Then got brought up into the booth at the end of it, met Warren Moon. So wasn't a bad weekend. Oh
well, maybe once COVID-19 ends and fans are allowed back in stadiums, I'm going down to Seattle to watch the Seahawks at CenturyLink.
It's a good game. It's expensive, but I mean, like,
I don't care if I'm at the
take the train down.
Yeah, I'll
take the train down.
Yeah, or once I get my license, I don't have my license, by the way. I'll drive down. Well, I won't.
Train is way easier. I'll say that.
Yeah, I'll take the train.
I started doing that because once you get down there, it's like $50 like park, like even by Mariners.
Damn.
Take the train down. You're right there.
Oh yeah, the station's right there.
The whole bit, right? That train saves you. Like it goes right. Even if you have to walk for like 10 minutes to get to the Hawks, you save how much money in gas to get down there. Because probably an hour or 2 hours to drive down there. And then all of a sudden, you save all that gas, and I mean, it's a long train ride, but whatever. Right in front of the stadium.
Fair point. And since we're on the topic of the NFL, big news out of the NFL. Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champion, signed the biggest contract in sports history, worth up to $503 million for the next. It's a 10-year deal, but he's gonna be. I think his current contract, or the one before, expires in 2 years, so he'll be there for another like 11 to 12 years in Kansas City. So it's a big contract, and $503 million, that could solve the Canucks cap situation, but is he worth that money? Much money? Yeah, he is a good player, and the richest contract in sports. So he's getting. Wait, let me look up the richest contract in sports.
I think that is it.
Yeah, that is the. I want to see who else is on that list.
Probably bunch of baseball deals.
Players.
And that's all.
Yeah, Mike Trout is second.
Bryce Harper and Machado, I think.
Giancarlo Stanton's on there. Manny Machado's on there. Some former Yankees.
Machado, Harper, and Trout are the highest in MLB.
Yeah, a lot of baseball players on here. Got a few basketball players. You got Russell Westbrook, Klay Thompson. Just wow, this list is stacked with baseball players because baseball.
When you talk about like if it's worth it though, like here's how I look at it: is Mahomes, he's not going anywhere, right?
Right.
And unless this is tied to. I thought this is a fair deal unless it was tied to, like, okay, you get, like, 25% of the cap or whatever, right?
Right.
Because if it's 25% of the cap, then I almost think it's tough to pay a quarterback that much, but at the same time, you kind of have to do it. So, I mean, like, for a guy that's realistically, been probably one or two every year in every statistical category as a quarterback, like, that matters, obviously, right?
Right.
Like I'm looking at the 2019 when I look at a quarterback's value, I like to look at their expected points added and then the completion percentage above expected. So it kind of gives us, how efficient a quarterback's playing on a per play basis and like how accurate they are. So like last year he was second only behind Russell Wilson in the combo, but then when you look at his efficiency, he's like way better than Russell Wilson. So I mean, like obviously he has good pieces around him, but we haven't really seen him without any really like top receivers. So. I mean, at the same time, like I don't even take that as like I'm not saying Mahomes is bad or anything at all. But like he's been first or second every year. He's had a good offense around him. Like as long as they keep an offense around him, I think the Chiefs are realistically going to be that. I think that the Chiefs could be a dynasty, and I think again it's going to come down to their defense almost because. You can only score 45 points a game every, so much. And the big question was also getting brought up to me was the way that he plays is almost like so dynamic that is he going to be able to play like that in the last like 3 years of his deal? That's the big question, obviously. But I also think you look at like CBS put an article about this is that how many 10-year deals have you had from a quarterback or I think they were looking at quarterbacks. So it's been Michael Vick, Brett Favre, Donovan McNabb, and one other player. Whoever it is. None of those deals worked out. So I think when you sign a deal like this, you almost go like, okay, like how many? If we win like a couple Super Bowls, then the deal's worth it because obviously you're going to be in a rebuild as soon as you see the end of it, and that's without question, not even debatable almost. But the thing is though is I think realistically the quarterback market value from Watson and Prescott and all these guys that are going to get paid after Mahomes is Mahomes' deal is obviously going to be like fourth or like fifth or whatever, like highest paid quarterback in 5 years. And what is he? He's got like a 12-year deal basically, so I'd almost think like this deal was like really good to get out of the way because even if he gets $45 million a year from a projection standpoint, how many people are going to get that pushed up? And then all of a sudden he's the fourth or fifth and the salary cap's up. So I think this was smart of them to get the deal out of the way with, almost the way that the Rams and Eagles tried to do with, Goff and Wentz. Whether you agreed with the deal process or not, the Eagles tried to get it out of the way before Prescott got paid, because then all of a sudden Wentz would be using that as a contract comparison, and they were worried they were going to pay way too much. So I think this was a very smart decision for the Chiefs to get the deal out of the way, and I think I'm still a fan of it because you look at it from a process standpoint that you're trying to win as many Super Bowls as you can during this deal, and if you get like 3 or 4, like what we kind of project Mahomes to probably get, I think it's a win for them, even if he doesn't pay off in the last 3 years of his contract, which I think he's a smart enough quarterback to have a game after, play the game as a pocket passer, compared to running all over the place like he is now later in his career.
Personally, I kind of like it. Mahomes is 24, and the Chiefs are the reigning Super Bowl champions. They want to win more. They're not going to be happy with just this one. And Mahomes is pretty much in his prime and will be for another few years. And when the deal ends in 2031, he'll be about 35 or so, something like that, or 36. And who knows if he'll still be good by then. But if the Chiefs want to make this contract worthwhile, gotta build a good receiving core around him. Gotta build a good defense around him if they want to win more Super Bowls. And I think, Mahomes is probably the best quarterback in the NFL. Many could argue. It's good they got this out of the way.
I think he is at this point.
At this point.
He is.
But there are other.
Sorry to interrupt, but he is. I think he's.
I'm gonna be There are a bunch of people who say like guys like Lamar Jackson or Russell Wilson, but I think it's Mahomes. But those guys are good too. So, good thing they got this out of the way, and they locked him up for a long time, and like $15.3 million a year. Mahomes, you can buy like 4 houses here in Vancouver with that money, and man, I just like to imagine myself with that kind of money. It's incredible. But anyway, I like the contract. Good they got it out of the way, and Mahomes is only gonna get better, and I expect more MVPs, and I expect the Chiefs to make a few more runs at the Super Bowl before the contract is up. And the NBA and the MLS, and the NHL even, are getting closer to return to play after the whole COVID-19 thing. MLS is back. They're starting the whole MLS is back tournament, but for the Vancouver Whitecaps, they have to wait a little longer because they were supposed to play FC Dallas, but about I think 10 or 12 players and staff on Dallas got tested positive for the virus, and they backed out. And so the Whitecaps, they have to wait around a little longer. And in the NBA, the players are starting to go to Orlando, and I've seen a few tweets from the players saying, "Yo, what is this hotel?" and all that. What is this? And all that. And the NHL, Edmonton and Toronto are pretty much the hub cities. Yesterday, they revealed which hotels each team is staying at. The Canucks are staying in the worst out of the 2 hotels at Edmonton, of course. And I don't know why I didn't put the Flames and Oilers together or something like that. That would have been cool. And I also saw a tweet yesterday saying, "What if they put cameras in the hotel in the NHL players' hotels? It would be like Big Brother, but with hockey players." Honestly, that would be.
I'd legitimately pay $30 a month.
Oh, I would too. I'd definitely watch that. Like
that'd be good TV.
That'd be great TV. But it's good that
How many things do you have to squeeze past the PA for that to happen, though?
I don't know, but with the sports returning, for the MLS, it's got off to a rough start, but they're pretty much underway despite a few hiccups. NBA hopes to get started, and I don't know why the players are complaining about their hotel rooms. And hopefully things go right for the NHL too, because I miss hockey. Like, seriously. I miss hockey. And there's a possibility that there'll be like 6 games a day in August. And that'd be pretty cool. Take a look at the show hotels. Let me take a look which NHL teams are in the hotels. Let's go Edmonton. Yeah, the Canucks are staying at Sutton Place with the Flames, Jets, Wild, Coyotes, and Blackhawks. While the Blues, Avalanche, Golden Knights, Stars, Oilers, and Predators stay at the Marriott.
I think it's fair though, relative, because the better teams get the better hotels. Like you basically have to do that. It's not unfair.
That's true. The Marriott is pretty much connected to Rogers Place, and the Sutton Hotel is about a 5-minute walk. Well, to be honest, 5 minutes is not much. A 5-minute walk is literally from my place to the market next to my place or something. And
but it's you're gonna have NHL guys complaining. What was it? I'll never forget when the draft was in Vancouver. The guys were staying across the street from the arena, and they're complaining that they wanted Uber because they couldn't cross the damn street.
Just cross the street, you lazy bums. In the East, the Bruins, the Lightning, the Capitals, the Flyers, and the Penguins are staying at Hotel X, which is located in the Canadian National Exhibition Grounds. It's kind of like a village there. And the Hurricanes, Islanders, Leafs, Blue Jackets, Panthers, Rangers, and Habs are staying at the Fairmont Royal Yoke in downtown Toronto. Interesting. And of course, Toronto puts the Bruins at the Further Hotel. Of course. And, well, I just hope things go smoothly for all sports leagues when they return. And, once again, they gotta be careful. And hopefully no players do any stupid stuff, like try to go out of their bubble. But it'd be good to have sports back again. It would be really good. Anyway, into pop culture news, the popular social media app TikTok could potentially be banned in the U.S. for security reasons because it is a Chinese app. I'm not going to go too much into that because I don't want too many politics on this website, podcast. But to be honest, if that app gets banned in the U.S. and even Canada, I'd be pretty happy. You know why? TikTok is just 95% cringe, in my opinion. But there are some exceptions, though. Like, what's his name? Bradley Thomas of Area 51. He makes those fire Canucks TikTok videos. And I think that's what the app should be used for. But, the rest of the app, I've seen some of the worst stuff on there. It's nothing but cringy dances, these people trying to lip sync to these stupid songs, and I've seen people do some dumb stuff on there. It's like really dumb. And I never really got the appeal of that app. Yeah, I'm pretty much, Ty and I are pretty much in the generation that uses that app, but for me, it's not for me. And I don't really see the point of it. It's nothing but cringy dances, stupid lip syncing, and just people doing some weird stuff. But guys like Brad from Area 51, he puts the app to good use. And to be honest, if TikTok gets banned, I'm 100% all for it. And but the worst part is, like with Vine, those TikTok stars might become YouTubers and make YouTube even worse. But I'd like to have it banned, to be honest. And
I honestly just I don't even care about TikTok outside of that. It's just I don't know. I don't understand the appeal of it really. And I mean, like I like what Brad does and the whole bit with Area 51, but like I don't know. Like I don't get the appeal of it.
me
at all.
neither. Like, what's the point?
These like okay. If you're gonna ask me, like these TikTok people just remind me of what Jake Paul was like, and I just thought, like,
pretty much.
he's an idiot.
Yeah.
He's just an idiot. Like, even if they become YouTubers, they're basically gonna become like that toxic Jake Paul 2.0. It's just gonna be, it's like, if it gets banned, then like whatever, but I don't know, I just hate them.
Yeah,
Just say that.
Yeah, I hate it too, and people do
It's like
some
buddy,
really
you
stupid.
think you're it's like you know, these guys like think they're all like big tough guys, and it's like, you freaking do TikTok for a living. Just get out of here.
Yeah, and a lot of couples do like some weird stuff on there. Some of them, I don't have to be reminded that I'm single, and some people like do these really dangerous stuff on there. It's so bad how much people would do anything for internet clout. But there are some good ones, like Brad from Area 51. There was one I saw that was really good. It depicted like your stereotypical Filipino party. You got your noisy kids, your drunk dad singing karaoke, the moms and aunts all gossiping. That was probably my favorite video seen on TikTok. But other than that, it's just stupid cringe. And even though we're in the demographics of it, I never got the appeal of it. Never. And if it gets banned, I'm all for it. And some more good. Let's move on to some good things. I am really starting to love Christian Pulisic, the young American who plays for Chelsea. And ever since the restart, the Premier League started, he's reminded me of Eden Hazard, my favorite footballer in like right now, who left Chelsea last year for Real Madrid. His dribbling reminds me of Hazard, the way he gets around players. He's been scoring goals, drawing penalties, and providing some assists. Almost like what Hazard did for Chelsea for 7 years. And it's only 21. Sky's the limit. I hope to get a jersey of him. Even though I'm Canadian, I really love Christian Pulisic. And I can't wait for him to continue to light up the Premier League and even the Champions League. And I've been a big fan of him since he was about 17, when he was with Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga. And man, he's starting. It reminds me so much of Hazard, and it's almost like I'm seeing another Hazard, but he's American. And they said last summer when he was brought to Chelsea, saying this man could be the one who replaces Eden Hazard, and we're starting to see it. But Pulisic is his own player, even though there are some similarities with Hazard, and he's also a great dribbler, and could potentially be one of the best wingers in the world. And I just can't wait to see him play even more. So I love Christian Pulisic, and if you're a football fan, you should too. Alright everyone, joining us for our featured guest this week is Brendan Batchelor of Sportsnet 650. He is the play-by-play voice of the Vancouver Canucks on Sportsnet 650 radio. Brendan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Our pleasure. let's first ask you about how you got into radio and broadcasting.
Yeah, well, I grew up as a fan of the Canucks. I grew up in Coquitlam, and when I was a kid, I always liked doing the play-by-play. At that point, it's just like a kid. You're playing imaginary games as a kid, right? So you're playing. I would play street hockey. I would do the play-by-play. I would play the NHL video game. I would do the play-by-play. I would watch a hockey game. I would mute the TV and do the play-by-play. And it was just something that I thought was a lot of fun when I was a kid. And then, when I was coming through high school and starting to think about what I would like to do for a career, it sort of dawned on me that, hey, this thing that I've, used to do as a kid just for fun is something that, A, would be a lot of fun, and B, I could get paid for and make it a career to watch and talk about hockey. So, that was sort of the motivation for me behind, pursuing sports broadcasting as a career. And then coming out of high school, I went to Ryerson University in Toronto for 1 year, planning at that point to work towards a journalism degree. So, right after high school, I moved out to Toronto. I did a year of school there. But the thing I realized pretty quickly is that, all the contacts I was making in the industry and the people I was getting to know were based in Toronto. And I had always thought that I would go to school in Toronto, but then I would want to come back and work in Vancouver. And so I was realizing this and thinking about it and looking through the Vancouver media and the people that had the jobs that I wanted. Well, John Shorthouse, who was the radio play-by-play voice of the Canucks at the time, went to BCIT. Dan Murphy went to BCIT. Pretty much, most of the people that you come across in the Vancouver media circle went to BCIT. So while I was still going to school in Toronto, I applied to BCIT and was accepted. So after 1 year in Toronto, I moved home and went through the broadcast journalism program at BCIT, and then got my foot in the door in the industry after that.
Okay.
Do you think you could possibly take us to your Vancouver Giants day and how you ended up getting into that gig over there?
Yeah, so I, coming out of BCIT, I started working at Team 1040 Radio, which of course is now TSN 1040, and was doing production work for them and the sports updates, and eventually I got to cover the Canucks a little bit and do some BC Lions reporting. But I always sort of wanted to get into play-by-play, and while I was doing all of these other things in the industry, it was still my goal to try and find a job in play-by-play, and I got one with the Surrey Eagles in the BCHL. And, that was perfect timing for me because the Surrey Eagles that year were an amazing team. This was the 2012-2013 season. They won the Fred Page Cup as BCHL champions. They went all the way to the national semi-final in Prince Edward Island, and I was there calling the games the whole way, so I got a ton of experience and really good experience covering a good team that won a lot and calling some pretty big games at the junior A level. And so after doing a season of that, the Vancouver Giants job came open, and I'd still been working part-time at TSN Radio. The Giants games were on TSN Radio, so it was a pretty natural fit that I applied for it. And some of my references were the program director at TSN Radio and a former Giants play-by-play guy as well. So, that certainly helped in that regard. And so I made the jump pretty quickly to the Giants and called 4 years of WHL hockey with that organization. Obviously, they weren't a very good team the whole time I was there. I only broadcasted 4 playoff games in my 4 years, and they were all losses, and they were all in my first year. They got swept by the Portland Winterhawks in the first round, and that was a pretty good Portland team that had former Canucks like Derek Pouliot and Brendan Leipsic, and then Nick Patan was on that team. Oliver Bjorkstrand, who's now in the NHL. So they were a pretty star-studded group, but that's how I sort of landed the job with the Giants. Was that first year of play-by-play in the BCHL was a really good one for me. I learned a lot. I think I grew a lot as a broadcaster, and it was a natural fit that I was already working at TSN Radio, so I was able to slide in and call Giants games as well.
And can you take us through your jump through the Vancouver Canucks, and what did you make of the opportunity when it first came about?
So I actually interviewed for the job to be the Canucks play-by-play guy in 2014, I guess it would have been, and that was at that point it was still the games were still on TSN radio. But Rick Ball was leaving to go and call games on TV in Calgary, and so there was going to be an opening there to broadcast games when John Shorthouse wasn't on the radio and was calling the games on TV. So I applied at that point, and I went through the interview process, and I was pretty young. I had 2 years of play-by-play experience at that point. I was 25, I believe. And so it was good to go through that interview process, but I certainly wouldn't have been ready to make that jump at that point. But then I guess it was 2017, so 3 years later, the news came out that the Canucks radio rights would be switching from TSN radio to Rogers, and that Rogers was going to start a new all-sports station called Sportsnet 650. So I reached out to some contacts I had with the Canucks from going through the interview process the first time around, and just said, hey, if I want to find a job at this new sports station, not even necessarily the Canucks play-by-play job, just any opportunities they might have, who would I get in touch with? And, they put me in touch with someone at Rogers, so I was able to apply that way. And then they announced that Craig McEwen was going to be hired as the program director at Sportsnet 650, and I had known Craig for a number of years just through the industry. I had done an internship with him when I was at BCIT, and he was working as the Pacific Bureau Chief at Sportsnet on the TV side at that point. And then he had subsequently been laid off from Sportsnet, and I had stayed in touch with him. He went to work for Volleyball BC, and we had kept in touch. And so when he was hired as the program director, I reached out to him directly, and we went through the interview process, and I was very lucky that they decided that I was the man for the job. And it was a pretty cool moment when you get that phone call saying, hey, you're going to be the next play-by-play voice of the Vancouver Canucks. It was something that I think if 5-year-old Brendan Batchelor knew that 20, 25 years in the future he would be calling Vancouver Canuck games on the radio just like John Shorthouse, he would have been pretty amazed by that news.
And obviously, kind of just judging from what we've heard so far, it's a really tough industry to break into, and you got to work really hard. Do you think you have any advice to give to anybody trying to make it in the industry?
Yeah, I would say never be too proud, right? Like you're not going to come out of broadcast school and immediately get the job you want. My first job in radio was being the guy that sat in the radio station in the middle of the night on weekends, just to make sure that all of the radio stations stayed on the air, and that if something went technically wrong, that someone was there to fix it. So, while I was going to school at BCIT, I was also working 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. on Friday and Saturday nights at the radio station. And, was it glamorous? No. Was it high paying? Certainly not. But it was an opportunity for me to be in the building and, for me to get experience and learn what it's like being around a radio station. And, that gradually led to me being, moved up to working during the day on the weekend, doing production stuff on both Team Radio and some of the other radio stations in the Bell Media cluster in Vancouver here, and then eventually, to being on the air. I also did the PA announcing for the Coquitlam Express for a number of years, but that was purely on a volunteer basis. So that was just for me to get experience, and I was not paid to do that. So that's what I would say, is you have to work hard, and you shouldn't expect that just because you've got a broadcasting degree or a journalism degree or a diploma or whatever you might have done through school, that you then can walk out of school and right into a prime time big job. You've got to work. You've got to prove yourself to people. In many people's cases, you have to move away from home. I was lucky that I've worked my entire career in Vancouver, but there are many people that go to small towns and work for small town radio stations to make a name for themselves and work their way up that way. So you have to be willing to sacrifice, and you have to be willing to work hard. And I would also say you have to love it too, because those sacrifices are not easy ones to make. And if you don't love what you're doing, then you're going to think twice about whether you want to stay in that industry. I look back at all the sacrifices I've made over the years in broadcasting. My first year in the industry, I worked the overnight shift on Christmas Eve and Christmas night and New Year's Eve, and I can think back to my days at BCIT where there was plenty a party that people were going to that I didn't, because I was going to work in the middle of the night. Once I got into doing play-by-play, you travel, you're away from home a lot. You miss birthdays, you miss holidays, you miss important moments for your family. So if you're going to do all of that and you're going to, make all of those sacrifices, you really have to love it, and you really have to, feel that it's worth it, because if you don't, then you're going to resent the work you're doing, and in the end, you're not going to want to continue.
All right, moving into the Canucks talk, what are some of your main takeaways of the Canucks season before everything shut down?
Well, it certainly was a big step in the right direction for this organization to be in the mix for a playoff spot when the season was paused anyway. And certainly you could debate whether they would have got there in the end or not. But, this year, more than any since I've started doing the play-by-play, this team took noticeable strides forward. Whether it was Quinn Hughes coming in and having his remarkable rookie season, whether it was adding a guy like JT Miller to the top six that provided additional scoring punch and a lot of consistency. Even a guy like Tyler Myers, who certainly is divisive in the market, did help that blue line improve just a little bit. And you think back to, what that back end had looked like over the previous two seasons with, guys like Derek Pouliot and Michael Delzato and Eric DeBranson, etc. The Canucks are certainly much more well-positioned on the back end now than they have been over the past couple of years, although there's still work to do. And then it really was proof that Jacob Markstrom has become a legitimate starting goaltender in the National Hockey League. And, we saw great play from him in the second half of the previous season, but coming into the start of this year, it was, his job to lose, and up to him to prove that, he could be a bona fide starter in the National Hockey League. And, in my mind, he didn't just do that, but he proved that at least this season he was a top 10 starter in the NHL and, potentially a Vezina candidate type goaltender. And that's something the Canucks haven't had in a while here since Roberto Luongo left, I would argue. So it was a big growth year for this group in terms of taking those strides towards getting to where they can try to contend and get into the playoffs. And now as we look ahead to the play-in round and the series with the Minnesota Wild and potentially opportunities to advance beyond that, and it's going to be a pretty important late portion of the summer for this group too, to really have their mettle tested in those big games that we're going to see here next month.
And obviously, this is a very debated topic on all platforms of social media and anywhere if you're a Canucks fan. Do you think you could maybe talk us through the cap situation maybe a little bit and your opinions on it?
Yeah, so here's what I would say. The cap situation is a problem. It certainly is. The flat cap going forward is going to make for some tough decisions for this organization. Now, is it possible they could still find a way to get out from underneath Louis Eriksson's contract? Yes, it is, and if they're able to do that, that would help alleviate some of the issues that they have right now. But, they are going to be forced to make tough decisions this off-season. I want to say this summer, but of course we know the off-season is going to be in October, November. You know, you look at some of the players that are pending free agents. In my mind, you look at Jake Virtanen and Tyler Toffoli, and I don't think you can bring both of those guys back simply because, you know, if you want to sign Tyler Toffoli, he's going to be a top 6 winger. You know, Brock Besser is going to be the other right winger in the top 6. And then you'd be looking at a guy like Jake Virtanen, who you have to pay potentially close to $3 million to not even play in your top 6. And then you start looking at the money you've already spent in the bottom 6 and thinking, you know, with the Sutter contract, with the Beagle contract, with the Eriksson contract, can I afford to spend another $3 million on a guy like Jake Virtanen, who, while he does have offensive upside, he was on pace to be a 20 goal scorer, isn't necessarily going to get a ton of power play time, isn't necessarily going to have a chance to play in the top 6. You know, these are the tough decisions the Canucks are going to have to make because of some of the contracts they've handed out over the past few years. But with all of that said, you know, I think in Vancouver there's a tendency, and especially on Canuck Twitter, to be really focused within the bubble of Vancouver and going, oh, things are awful for the Canucks. They're really in a tough situation. But if you look around the league, the Canucks are not the only team that is going to be impacted by this flat cap. The Toronto Maple Leafs have spent a ton of money on their top-end forwards, and they're still going to have to find a way to build out the rest of their roster. You know, you look around the league at multiple other teams that are going to have tough decisions to make to stay under this flat cap. So it's not a good situation for the Canucks. I don't think you could sugarcoat it and say that it is, but it's not like it's a unique situation among teams around the NHL where there are lots of general managers that are going to have to find a way to, you know, get creative here with the salary cap and maybe have to move off some higher contracts and you know, throw sweeteners into trades in order to do that. The one thing I take away from it all, though, is that if there's one team that's going to benefit from the current economic situation in the NHL as a result of COVID-19, it's the new Seattle club, because this sets up pretty well for them to be on the receiving end of some of those trades where they can afford to take a big contract on because, you know, as it sits right now, they have all their salary cap room open. And maybe they'll need you to throw in a sweetener to do it. So it's going to be an interesting off-season come the fall, and then looking ahead to late next summer as well, assuming that they're able to get next season through safely and you know, complete next season. That you know, there are going to be a lot of teams that are going to be in a similar situation to the Canucks, and it'll be very interesting to see how some of these general managers try to get out of these problems.
So, Judd Brackett, the director of amateur scouting, left the Canucks last May, and today he was hired by the Minnesota Wild. What do you make of his departure and him being hired by Minnesota?
Well, him being hired by Minnesota, I think is you know, not as big of a story as some people would make it, in the sense that, you know, yes, the Canucks are going to play Minnesota in this play-in series, but, you know, Judd Brackett's an amateur scout. His job is focusing on players for the draft. It's not like he's going to have any added intel or give the Wild an edge in the playoff series just because they've brought him in. But, you know, when you look back at the way that he left the Canucks organization, it's definitely concerning that, you know, a scouting director that had as much success as he had during his tenure was allowed to leave, and it seems anyway that he was allowed to leave because of, you know, personal disagreements within the management group. Now, you know, Jim Benning is certainly within his right to run the ship or steer the ship the way he wants. He's the general manager. That's his job. And if he didn't see that there was a fit there, or if there was a difference in opinion, he's well within his right to do that. But what was most concerning for me about the whole Judd Brackett situation is how much it was litigated in the media. You know, generally speaking, if you have these issues in an organization, they're discussed behind closed doors. But, you know, it seemed like any time there was development in the Judd Brackett story, it was all over the news and on the radio, and you know, it became a big talking point, to the point where Judd Brackett without a doubt, is the most discussed amateur scouting director in Vancouver Canucks history. So, both sides come out of that with a bad look, not just the Canucks, but Judd Brackett as well, because, those are issues that in many ways should be kept private, and certainly they weren't in this situation. But, to characterize the Judd Brackett story as anything other than a loss for the Canucks is inaccurate in my mind. It's a situation where, a scouting director that had done a good job, has left the organization. A good scout has left the organization, and because none of us were in the room when these negotiations were happening and these disagreements were happening, it's hard for me to say with certainty, the reasons behind these things other than what's been reported, or to speculate too much more beyond that. But just to say that anytime an organization has someone that's done a good job leave, and it's not a situation where they're leaving to take a higher position with another club. So, for example, if Judd Brackett had been hired as an assistant general manager for another team, that would have been more understandable, because that's a guy leaving to go and find a job at a higher level. Certainly that wasn't what happened in this case, and that's not a good thing for the Canucks. But with all that said, I think to a certain extent, Judd Brackett has been given a ton of credit on social media and in the media. Some of that credit is warranted, but some of that credit is hyperbole. And, as much as he was a big part of the draft picks the Canucks made over the last few years, the Canucks have a lot of scouts. They've got a lot of smart people in their front office that will have, been a part of these decisions as well. So, really, when we look back on the Judd Brackett era in Vancouver, we're going to remember some of the great players that he was a part of selecting, whether it was Elias Pettersson or Quinn Hughes or Brock Besser. But at the same time, I think that era is going to be defined by what happens next. And, it seems to me there's an assumption from some people in the fan base that the Canucks drafting is now immediately going to go in the tank just because they don't have Judd Brackett. And I don't know if that's entirely accurate, because they still have some good scouts. They still have some good people in that department, and we're going to have to wait and see. So, this discussion isn't necessarily something we can close the book on for another 10 or 15 years, because if we look back in a decade and the next 3 years of Canuck drafts are all really strong and produce really good players, then maybe we'll say, okay, Judd Brackett was a good part of the Canucks organization when he was there, but they were still able to find a way to draft good players after he left. But then the opposite is also possible, where if the Canucks drafting really takes a beating over the next few years, then the myth of Judd Brackett and the impact he had on this organization will only grow.
Now with the NHL coming back to restart, do you think you could give us a little bit of insight into their plans and what you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the way that all of the major pro sports leagues have figured out their return to play plans, the NHL has the best setup of any of the leagues, because they've taken their time and they've made correct decisions all the way through the process. The biggest of which is that both hub cities are going to be in Canada. So you see the rising COVID numbers throughout the United States. You see the issues that Major League Soccer is having with their MLS is Back tournament in Florida, and now 2 teams have had to pull out of that because of COVID outbreaks. You see the issues Major League Baseball is having with, notable players saying they're not going to play this season. Same goes with the NBA and their plan to go to Florida. The fact that the NHL waited, made the right decision that they're going to play their games in Canada. And then, all through this process, I've been incredibly impressed with the level of detail that the NHL has outlined in trying to limit any positive COVID-19 tests if they can, to the point where for Phase 2, which I guess is, a month ago that they got into Phase 2, they released a 22-page document with all the details about what needs to happen, down to the tiniest detail that there have to be plastic dividers in the bench to separate water bottles so that one water bottle doesn't accidentally tip over and touch another water bottle, because of course during all of this, water bottles will be individualized to players, and you can certainly understand why that would be the case. So, coming to Canada, trying to figure out all these details, the amount of testing they're going to do once they get these players into the secure zones or the bubbles, those are all good things from the NHL's perspective. It's not to say that it's completely foolproof. It's not to say that, COVID-19 couldn't still have an impact on this return to play, and that the NHL still could run into issues once they are getting all those players into those hub cities. But from that perspective, I think they've set themselves up almost as well as they can to have these playoffs go off and go off well. When it comes to the playoff format, I like it. And I know there'll be some people out there that will quibble with it and say that, you can throw an asterisk next to the Stanley Cup champion this year, but I don't agree with that. You're still playing 4 rounds of best of 7. The play-in series are another added wrinkle where potentially the team that wins the Stanley Cup at the end of the playoffs will be able to say, we won 5 rounds this year, not 4. Obviously it's unprecedented times with, essentially an off season having taken place, and now players coming back and jumping right into win or go home series. So that's unique, but there's nothing you can do to avoid that. I would imagine that when we get to the end of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and hopefully they're able to award a Stanley Cup champion with the Stanley Cup in late September or early August, that we can look back on this playoff year and the way they've done it and say that it was as close as they could have possibly gotten to what we normally experience in April, May, and June every year.
Do you have any predictions for the Canucks and Wild series?
It's so hard to peg this series, and certainly it's something that we pay a lot of attention to here in Vancouver because it's the Canucks, and we follow them very closely. But as far as all the play-in series go, I think the Canucks and the Wild might be the hardest one to predict who's going to win. And then any prediction right now is difficult because of all the other factors as well. COVID-19, the fact that all these guys are going to be well rested going into a playoff series, as opposed to what we would normally see where they're bruised and battered from an 82 game season and jumping into the playoffs. I think it's going to be a close series. I don't think it's going to be a 3-game sweep for either team. But the Canucks' youth and their high-end talent and their goaltending should be what makes the difference in this series. So if I have to make a prediction, I'll say that it'll be the Canucks in 5 games over Minnesota. But at the same time, I am totally willing to admit that if my prediction is the exact opposite, I won't be surprised, because really in these unprecedented times during the pandemic and the amount of time these guys have had off, I have no idea what to expect from playoff hockey in general, let alone this one specific series.
Do you think that this could be almost just as competitive as a team that is coming in battered and bruised? Because coaches have 2 months to prepare their game plans, and guys are skating. So I think realistically it could be just as competitive as the normal playoff.
Yeah, well, it'll certainly be competitive, but it might be a little more sloppy than we normally see the style of game, just because when you're coming into the regular Stanley Cup playoffs, you've played a full 82 game season, and you might be battered and bruised or not 100% in terms of rest, but you also have your timing down, and you've been playing a lot, and you're comfortable with your line mates, and you've built chemistry, and the systems that your organization is going to play very well. So all of those things that are positives when you're coming in after playing a whole season are not there, and in many ways, this is going to be like the start of a season where, maybe you're still figuring out the way your coach wants you to forecheck, or, your exact defensive structure within the defensive zone. So because of that, in my mind, the teams that will have the most success in the playoffs this year are the teams that are established, have been together for multiple years, and really know the way they want to play the game. And, I know a lot of Canuck fans won't want to hear this, but I think this sets up really well for the Boston Bruins because their core players have been together for a long time. They played on the same line. That top line in Boston, the line that Bergeron centers, those guys have played together. They played together a lot. They know how each other, they know the style of play of their line mates. They know how to read and react. Whereas, not to say that JT Miller and Elias Pettersson and Tyler Toffoli, if that is the line, can't be successful. But, since Tyler Toffoli arrived, those guys have played, a dozen games together? So that built-in chemistry isn't necessarily there. So in some ways, teams will be more well-rested and they'll be more able to compete with a high level of energy because of the fact that there hasn't been a season. But in other ways, early in the season, we often see a lot more mistakes lead to goals just because, again, players' timing isn't there from having had a whole off-season away from playing competitive games anyway. And, maybe you've got new systems your coach is putting in and things like that. The other factor about this that is going to be very different is even at the start of a normal regular season, you have a training camp and then you have multiple weeks of exhibition games. Teams usually play, 6 to 8 exhibition games. Whereas in this situation, it's going to be like a 10-day training camp, 2 exhibition games, and then here we go, game 1 of a 5-game series where if you don't jump out of the gate well and, you're a little slow getting your game together as a team over the first 2 or 3 games, you might already be finished. And then all the work you've done to return is by the wayside. And, I think we will certainly see some teams have that happen to them. I expect there will be upsets in this play-in round just because, maybe there's one team that's more ready to go or more prepared than another. But all of that said, I still expect it to be very exciting, very intriguing, and I can't wait for the play-in round to start, not just because we're going to be able to broadcast Canuck, I guess you could call them quasi-playoff games for the first time because, the Canucks haven't made the playoffs since we've been doing the games on Sportsnet 650, but also just to have hockey back and to potentially be able to sit back and watch 6 games a day in early August is something that's pretty exciting for me, and I'm sure it's exciting for a lot of hockey fans out there as well.
And our final question is: do you have a funny Canuck story on the road, whether it involves the players or the media?
Yeah. So people will ask me, what was that moment where you were like, wow, I'm really broadcasting games in the NHL? And certainly when I called my first regular season game, the Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers, and realizing that I'm doing the play-by-play for a game that Connor McDavid's playing in, that was a really cool moment for me. But my real welcome to the NHL moment was the first preseason road game that I got to broadcast. So we went down to Los Angeles, traveled down to LA. The Canucks were playing the Kings in a preseason game the next night, and we get in the night before, and John Shorthouse and John Garrett are like, hey, we're going for dinner at this sports bar down the street. Do you want to come? And I said, okay, sure. So I went and joined them for dinner. And, John Garrett, Cheech, of course, well known for his consumption of ketchup and fast food and all of that stuff. Cheech, when we sit down for dinner that night, orders a pepperoni pizza. Pepperoni pizza comes. He says, oh, can I have some ketchup, please? So he's got his pepperoni pizza. He's got his plate. He squirts a big pile of ketchup onto his plate, takes his pepperoni pizza, and dips it in the ketchup and eats it. And it's like nothing I've ever seen before. I've seen Cheech do it multiple times since then, and that was my real, wow, I guess I'm here. I'm in the NHL now. Here's John Garrett eating ketchup across the table from me.
Well, once again, thanks for doing this, Batch, and you can follow Brendan Batchelor on Twitter at BatchHockey, and once again, thank you for doing this, and we enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
He rocks in the treetop all the day long, hopping and a bopping and a singing his song. All the little birds on Jaybird Street love to hear the robin go tweet, 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 rockin' robin, tweet, tweet, rockin' robin, tweet, tweet, rockin' robin.
It's time for the best and worst Twitter and question period. I'll start off first. Let's start with the worst, because it's always better to start with the worst. So this guy, and shame his name is Joshua, at Joshua THFC, posted a picture of some girls and just put, "my girlfriend, by the way." And then that girl replied saying, "Literally, who the fuck are you?" And like, sucks his name is Joshua, but I don't know what he was thinking here. Just using some random girl on Twitter's profile pic and just said, "This is my girlfriend." Like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? And maybe you're screwed in the head because you're also a Tottenham Hotspur fan. And here's another really bad one from the Toronto Sun, and I have no idea why this still hasn't been deleted. I think they were hacked or whatever. The Toronto Sun tweeted, "Sunshine Girl Sunny enjoys warm destinations and beach bikinis. Hashtag modeling and yada yada yada." And put some good-looking blonde girl on there. And I don't know if they were hacked or whatever, but why would a newspaper do this? Like, why? This is a newspaper. And I really don't understand why this hasn't been deleted yet. Like, what the hell? Anyway, time for the best. I got a few good ones. There's this video of a kid trying to skateboard, and then hold on, I have it here somewhere. I retweeted it as well. Yeah, here. And so he's skateboarding, and he tries to do the flip, but instead of him flying with the skateboard, he himself gets launched into the air, and lands on the concrete. And it's pretty funny, but I hope that kid's okay. And from judging by the end of the video, he just walked it off. Must be one tough kid. And finally, there's one where Fabrizio Romano, the one of the lead insiders for European football, who reports the transfers and all that, he tweeted about Kai Havertz potentially joining Chelsea, and this Tottenham Hotspur fan named Mark Ashley says, "Please Spurs news?" And then a fake Fabrizio Romano account replies with, "Still shit." And I thought this was the real Fabrizio when I saw this. I was like, whoa. And oh man, I was laughing for like 15 minutes when I first saw this. Oh my, because I really thought that was actually Fabrizio. And oh by the way, there is nothing better than seeing Fabrizio Romano tweet, "Here we go," when your team makes a potential transfer. There's nothing better than that. Anyway, Ty, do you have any?
I don't, sorry.
Alright, let's move on to questions. We only have one question. Come on, guys, step up the questions, because we love answering them for you. It's from another podcaster. His name is Andy, at AndyPer16. He is a member of the Cap Space Wins Cups podcast. That's also a very good podcast, and we recommend you listen to them. He asks, would you rather have the Canucks win one cup in your lifetime, or all the other teams you support have dynasties?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, I know this is a Canucks podcast, but I mean, like, rather have dynasty with the with all the other teams that support, because then at least you're happy there and you can complain about the Canucks on Twitter.
Well, that's one way to look at it, but I'd rather have the Canucks have the Canucks win one Stanley Cup in my lifetime. I don't care.
But here's the thing, though, is like you have, let's say like you support, I support the Raptors, not as like heavily as like other people I know, but support the Jays pretty heavily, support the BC Lions pretty heavily, Seahawks. I don't know, I'd rather have dynasties over there than over just one cup, because dynasties win at least 3, right?
Right, or in consecutive too. But again, it's also my Chelsea fandom. Chelsea have won so many trophies, and they were a dynasty back in the mid 2000s, and one could argue they were a dynasty between 2015 and 2017 because they won 2 titles in 3 years. So they've won so many trophies already, and of all the teams I support, I like the Raptors, not as much as other people, but they won the title last year. The Seahawks won the Super Bowl in 2013. Could have won one more, but the Blue Jays, I haven't seen them win a World Series in my lifetime, but they've won 92-93. But the only team that I support that hasn't won a single trophy is the Canucks. And they're my first sports team, the one that made me love sports, and they're pretty much the reason why I'm doing this podcast and writing, and I'd love to see a Stanley Cup in my lifetime. It will be sooner rather than later, but I don't want to die without seeing the Canucks win the Stanley Cup. I just want at least one. Please.
I'll get one.
Hopefully, but before I get old. And if the Canucks can't... I said this before, but if the Canucks can't win a Stanley Cup without Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes and this young core, then I'm afraid we probably might never win one. So, that answers your question, Andy. There you go. And that's all the time we have today on Avid Discussers. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope you enjoyed our interview with Brendan Batchelor. And we got a special one coming out on Sunday. This is being recorded Friday and coming out Saturday. And we recorded the special episode on Wednesday. Then that'll be out Sunday. And it'll be a much shorter one. And only an interview with a former Canucks player. And I'm not gonna mention it on the air because you probably already know.
We already mentioned it, so we can mention this. Gino
Ojic. We interviewed him, and
got a bunch of good stories there, and talks about his health, his culture a bit, and some of the '94 series. So we were glad to have him.
And that'll be out Sunday at 6 a.m. This episode will be out Saturday at 6 a.m. And this is the one with Brendan Batchelor, and we had a nice chat with him too. So, hope you continue to support us. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or give us some feedback on Twitter. Our DMs are open. You can follow Avid Discussers at Avid Discussers on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find the podcast on Facebook. Search up Avid Discussers Podcast. And you can follow me and Ty on Twitter at JoshRay91 and TParty21. And those are the same handles for Instagram too, so give us a follow there if you want. As always, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and all the other streaming platforms. And your support and feedback means the world to us. And Ty, do you have anything to say before we wrap up?
No, not much other than say, I'm really enjoying doing this, and we're having a good time, just as we hope you guys are enjoying listening to us.
Yeah, you might not like our takes, but we hope you enjoy listening to Avid Discussers, and we will see you next week. Peace out.